Yoink the Clown.
Welcome to episode 284 of the Working Fans Podcast, where there is a lot in wrestling to talk about. There's a little bit outside of wrestling to talk about. But before we talk about anything, we are going to talk about Game Up Hard Hydration. It's like your favorite sports drink and your favorite seltzer merged together became something so much better. Dave has the stats down. Dave, let us know.
That's right, guys. It's a full flavored drink, only 110 calories per can, low carb, comes in it comes in an 8-pack, 4 great flavors, fruit punch, orange, lemon lime, and grape. Enjoy some Game Up.
And we're going to find out if you enjoyed AEW Grand Slam Australia. Dave and I both finished watching this morning. And what are your thoughts on it, Dave?
I thought it was a good show. I was not staying up till 10:30 to watch this last night. That just wasn't going to happen. But I enjoyed it. The only thing that stinks about watching a show when it's on tape delay or even, is trying to avoid spoilers. I did miss the spoiler. I caught a spoiler. I knew what was going to happen in the main event. I saw Tony Storm won the championship, which I thought was probably the highlight of the show, and I had that spoiled for me. But, overall, I enjoyed the show. I enjoyed, everybody singing Adam Copeland's theme song. He seemed genuinely touched by that moment. Cool to see AEW performing in front of a live, large audience. I feel like it's been a while since we've seen a packed crowd like that at an AEW show. That was pretty cool to see. Trying to look at my notes here if there's anything else that really kind of stuck out for me. Not really. I would say Tony Storm. And
live up to the hype for you.
Yeah, I didn't have high expectations going for this show, so it did all right for me.
Yeah, I think it would have been a great collision.
Right.
It would have been a solid Dynamite. But for them to put the Grand Slam name on it, maybe it's just because all the other Grand Slams have felt so big. And and we heard all the drama behind the scenes with this going from a huge stadium to going to a smaller venue. And, people that bought tickets, these more expensive tickets were getting moved around. So when I hear all that and then I saw the show we got, I'm like, it was decent, but it didn't, live up to, I thought how it was getting hyped up. I thought it was great. They started the match with the tag team match. I thought it was great. They ended with the women's match.
Yes.
The Brisbane Brawl was all right, but I don't know. It didn't hit as hard for me, I didn't think.
Yeah, that opening tag match was pretty solid. I enjoyed that a lot, too. I didn't mention that, but that was good. I would have liked to see Takeshita and Fletcher win, but I guess, we're building up singles matches here. Takeshita already has the wins over Omega. We're going to build that. My guess is we're building toward Omega and Okada eventually, so Omega will need to probably get some momentum as we lead towards that. But, yeah, overall, I thought it was I'm not going to get away from this one. Sorry, guys. Yeah, overall, I thought it was a solid show. I enjoyed it, but yeah, it was better than a normal Collision and maybe a little bit better than a normal Dynamite.
Buddy Matthews got robbed. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Now we're going to go from something we definitely saw and had a lot of talk this week to something a little off topic. Because, Dave, I was talking about this. Did you get to see the halftime show?
No, I didn't see this yet. I've been too busy.
My God. I enjoyed it, and I'll relate it to wrestling.
I thought this was Jimmy Uso. Who's this?
This is Kendrick Lamar. You know that. What I really liked about it was the amount of storytelling in it, the depth, the way he did it his way. I really enjoyed it. For anybody in the wrestling world that hasn't come upon this, which I'd be surprised because this man's streams went up wildly, I would check it out. But now we're going to go from something I saw and enjoyed
NXT
to something I'm not going to see till this afternoon. So Dave's going to spoil all the results for me. Yeah. And then I'm going to comment on it. This was
Enjoy your viewing. We started off Stephanie McCool did win the NXT North American Women's Championship. I don't think that was too much of a shock. I think we both thought we were headed in that direction because she's been really built up, and I thought they would do something for her with Julia being the NXT Women's Champion. Stephanie was going to get a championship.
Yeah, that was, I mean, we saw this pretty much coming. It's, about time now. Julia had that championship, has the championship. Stephanie Vicker, these women are coming in huge.
So then we had our tag match with one of Joe's favorite tag teams, Faxium, which, by the way, AJ, I talked to him last night. He says, I don't hate them, but they're not one of my favorites, which I thought was funny because I thought about you. And I was like, I like these guys. They kind of remind me of like a modern day, like Midnight Rockers kind of tag team.
Yeah, those fast paced, high flying. We saw these guys live against each other, I think is the pre-show to NXT Deadline.
Yeah.
2 years ago, I think it is now. Yeah. And they were a great opener, and I've just loved them ever since they've teamed. But they were up against
So in Inamura, I believe I'm saying that right, and Josh Briggs, a couple ass kickers here. Like, I like this team a lot. Briggs and Inamura, like, there's this. First off, I've seen Briggs since his independent days. I remember watching him with shows with you at Beyond Wrestling. I never was like super into the guy in the independents. Like, I thought, okay, there's something here, but it's just not for me. He's coming to his own now these last few years at NXT. They've done a good job with him. This team feels like one of those old, Williams, Gordy, Stan Hansen, maybe Doc, like it feels like one of those tag teams that just kick ass from All Japan. I really enjoyed this match. They were beating up Faxium a lot, but Faxium kept hanging in there, selling, and ultimately Faxium keeps the tag titles, which is, hey, I said this before, I think we're building to a Faxium Hardy Boys match, NXT versus TNA at Stand and Deliver. So I hope we keep going there.
That could be very interesting. I agree with you on the Briggs and Inamura team. I saw them this past week on NXT.
Yeah.
And I just thought they fit together so well. And I was thinking the same thing about Briggs, how when he was in Evolve, how when he was in Beyond, I was into him, but I didn't ever think like, oh, this dude's going to be a star. And now he's on his second big tag team in NXT. And Dave, I don't know if you saw the news this week that it's Stand and Deliver, WrestleMania, and TNA are all going to be in Las Vegas for that weekend.
Oh, wow. So good for TNA to get a piece of that too then.
Yeah, really kind of creeping in, making that bigger package deal. I'm glad Faxium retained, though.
Yeah, and in a match I don't have a ton to say about because I actually had to get up and leave for a minute, but the upset of the night, Eddie Thorpe got the victory over Trick Williams. I don't think a lot of people saw that coming.
Did you get out of the room to save yourself from having the comment on a strap match? Because when I saw this match develop on NXT this week, I was like, whew, that's rough. But I'm interested in this match because Trick Williams obviously being favorite in NXT for a while.
Yeah.
Eddie Thorpe, I think, hasn't been used a ton, but every time I see him, I'm like, oh, this is interesting.
Another guy who was in that New Japan dojo for a while too, one of the young lions over there, and now in the NXT system. I think it's just he's the product of he's been around a lot of good people to help train him, and I think there's a chance Eddie Thorpe could be one of those guys that comes, into his own as time goes on because he's just been around a lot of good people. All right, Ethan Page, Javon Evans. We called this one last week. We said Javon Evans was going to pull this off. We were wrong. We didn't know shit. Javon Evans puts on a hell of a match, but ultimately Ethan Page caught him with a big right hand coming off the ropes. He's selling the jaw. Ethan Page hits his finisher, and Ethan Page continues his momentum and gets the win. Afterwards, Javon is selling the blood in his mouth again. I think there's still going to be good things for Javon, but to me, I took this as Ethan Page is going to another level. Maybe, we're going to see Ethan Page possibly in a title picture again soon, whether it's North American title or Bafemi. I know the North American title situation's got some things going on now with Sean Spears and everything being involved, but Obafemi is going to need a new challenger, as we'll talk about later.
I really forgot what I was going to say for a second. This is one of those things in pro wrestling that I really enjoy when you think something's going to go somewhere like for sure. And you've been watching wrestling enough that, you've considered both sides and you're like, this person is definitely going to win. And then they go the other way and you're mad. And it's like when you're 10, 11 years old and your favorite wrestler loses on Monday Night Raw and you can't begin to fathom why. I love that this went the other direction. I can't wait to see the match later because they've really been building up the seriousness of Javon getting into the match and how he had to sign that agreement that the WWE wasn't responsible. So they made this feel huge and they didn't go the way we wanted. So
continuing the heel run for Ethan Page. All right, Obafemi, no surprise here, beats Grayson Waller and Austin Theory. There was some great moments. They did put together a great match. Grayson Waller actually pulled Austin Theory. He pulled the ref out of the ring when Austin Theory had a pin at one point. But ultimately, Obafemi survives. Obafemi still the man, still the champion. Afterwards, I didn't talk about this before, but these guys with masks, basically kind of a Shield 2.0 coming out. They beat up Obafemi. Earlier, they had beaten up Faxium, too. So not quite sure what this group is going to be. The crowd chanted after they came out earlier, "Who are you?" That's always never a good start. One of the guys is Dion Lennox. That was talked about on commentary. So there are a lot of guys at the Performance Center that are going to get kind of this push here. I guess this is the thing you've been seeing at the end of NXT where they show NXT Vengeance, and there's like this static type thing, and everything. I almost kind of reminded me of Sanity a little bit, honestly. But yeah. So, I mean, it's some guys into the mask. They're calling them Shield 2. They're not. The internet has called them Shield 2.0 or Shield Wish or whatever. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. It's a rough start when nobody knows who you are, but that is something that we'll have to see as time goes on. Maybe there'll be a star out of this group.
I mean, better to be Shield 2.0 than Retribution 2.0, which when Retribution first came out, I really liked that debut. Right. And it's the same with what you described here, where they build it up with that static, and then there's a beatdown after a match. It's a time-tested method to get people interested in a group, but will that interest keep up? I hope so.
All right. Main event, what ended up being a four-way. Julia pins Cora Jade. It was Julia versus Bayley versus Roxanne Perez, and Cora Jade was added. Fun match. Great back and forth at the end, though. Julia keeps her title. Just good stuff here. I like the way that Cora Jade was injected in this match after beating Bayley. Bayley, who got a win on Raw and is in the Elimination Chamber, lost on NXT. Bayley's doing a great job help putting some people over. But in the end, this was Julia's moment. She shined. But at the very end of this, we get Stephanie McCool in the ring. And the two women kind of stare off at each other, but then hold their titles up in the air. And it looks like one of those big moments like, hey, these two ladies are the future. And then, bam. Here comes Jordynne Grace to end the show right after the logo comes up, and it's Jordynne Grace staring off at both women, and we're left wondering, now Jordynne Grace is in the mix. What title is she going to challenge for first? And I think it was Vic Joseph at the end said that this is the strongest women's division in the world, and he's probably right at this point.
Oh, man, we've been talking about it for so long that even before they added Jordynne Grace, they have had one of the best, women's divisions. And I believe you said it last week that this women's title match should main event the thing.
Yeah,
it did.
They did.
They put in probably an even bigger angle to come out of it. So it just makes it that much more exciting. I cannot wait to see this later. And I can't wait to watch NXT this week because in the main event this week, we'll talk about another reason why I'm looking forward to that. But then this Jordynne Grace thing, it puts it right up there with it. And that was Vengeance Day. Last night on Friday night on SmackDown, we had 2 nights ago. Jesus. We had the big call out for WrestleMania. It's going to be Charlotte Flair versus Tiffany Stratton. How do you feel about this matchup? Personally, I'm glad she chose Tiffany.
Yeah, I think it's a good matchup. It's interesting. We also ended up with Trish Stratus being involved earlier with Nia Jax and Candice LeRae was double teaming Tiffany. And now we got a big match for Elimination Chamber, right? With Tiffany and Trish taking on Candice and Nia. And now we know it's going to be Tiffany going against Charlotte. So it's interesting to me because also Monday night on Raw, I'm going to tie this in there too. Jey Uso decided he wanted to wrestle Gunther for his championship. So now we have two of the world title matches here. You know, one for the men, one for the women. I liked it. We already know where we're headed at this point in the game. We're in February, and we know we're getting Charlotte and Tiffany. We know we're getting Jay and Gunther. So this is pretty cool. This is probably the freshest matchup we could have had out of all of them. So I'm curious to see what we'll see.
Yeah, and what I like is you have these matches decided. So now you've got Cody Rhodes. There's going to be the big question. Who's he going up against? It's lining up a lot of things for Mania. So right. I like how we know some things. I like how we're starting to find out other things. And then the big announcement this week, I mean, you could debate if it's a big announcement. Michelle McCool is going into the Hall of Fame. I'm only saying you could debate because honestly, I'm not familiar with Michelle McCool's career. And I don't know if this is warranted. To me, it almost feels like a bit of a stretch, but like I said, I'm not very familiar. Is this a stretch, Dave?
I expected this today because this was a time period where I know we talked about where you weren't really watching. This is a tough time period for me because this is the Divas era. This is not women's, this is not Medusa. This is not Wendy Richter. This is not Trish Stratus and Lita. This is that period where it's just the Divas. And it's unfortunate because there was some really talented women's wrestlers in that era, and Michelle McCool was one of them. Beth Phoenix would have been one who's already in the Hall of Fame. Natalia, of course, was part of that too to a point. But yeah, Michelle McCool, probably most famous for being part of Le Cool with her partner Layla. I think it was Leia. I don't remember her name. Layla. They were part of like this faction together, and they're probably most famous for making fun of Mickie James's weight. And they were a heel faction, and just got a lot of people mad. They used to call her Piggy James, and they would have these little things, and they put like little pig masks on themselves. I'm like, I'm Piggy James, oink, 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 which, hey, that's horrible, but I giggle, whatever, I don't care. This shit made me laugh. But they were heels. That's what heels did. And she's a great athlete. She's part of that new series that's coming up. She's going to be one of the coaches, Legends and Future Greats, LFG. Starts tonight. So, yeah, we'll see how that goes. Is she deserving? Sure. She was a women's champion. She was part of that division. Is she like one of those women where I'm like, yes, trailblazer? No. I mean, it's not Medusa. It's not, any of those women. It's not. But, yeah, she can get it.
I mean, and also, she's the Undertaker's wife. I don't know.
That ain't hurt.
Plays into it at all.
Yeah, that ain't going to hurt you.
Now that we're bringing up Legends and Future Greats, they have that big block that's starting on A&E tonight. Legends and Future Greats, doing the rivals. There's WWE Greatest Moments. Will you be watching this at all, Dave?
I am curious. I can't say yet. I got a lot on my schedule. So will I add it? I did enjoy some of the stuff I've seen where Gunther was giving one of the girls a hard time. Bully Ray getting into one of the guys. I like it, but it still kind of looks like that reality TV format to me, which I'm just not really a fan of overall.
Yeah, same here. I'm interested as well. I don't know if you noticed, but tonight is the NFL SNL 50th anniversary special as well. So there's a lot to watch tonight. I might throw it on the DVR. But something that I know I have an opinion about, and that is the Usos versus the Steiner Brothers, better brother tag team. And now that I say I know, I find it tough because I have always been a fan of the Steiner Brothers since, the early WCW days when they were wearing these very jackets. before Scott Steiner's look really transformed as much as it
Oh, yeah.
did. But when I got back into wrestling, the Usos were on that main roster. They were still doing that whole entrance. I loved everything about them. And now that we see how far they've come in like the 10 plus years that I've been watching them, I can't go against the Steiner brothers. I want to because the Usos have set a new modern style. I love how they have their own feel to things, but you can't go against Rick and Scott.
I gotta agree. Unfortunately, we're not gonna argue on this one because I like the Usos. They really have made names for themselves, and they are probably the team of the modern era. Them in New Day. But when you're talking about the Steiner brothers, I mean, they're just such a great tag team. They were so innovative with all their suplexes, their off the top rope bulldogs, the DDTs. We're talking about titles at WCW, NWA, New Japan Pro Wrestling, WWF. Like, they were champs and top stars everywhere. And sometimes I don't think they get to do because, the Road Warriors were around that time too still. And sometimes I wonder if they get to do as the top team. But to me, they were. They were the top team for many, many years.
This was hands down, an easy decision for us. And if you want to speak of easy decisions, Ricky Starks made his appearance in NXT this week, like a day after his official release was announced. What did you think of this debut? I think it caused a lot of excitement in wrestling, and I personally can't wait to see what's going to come this week, what's going to come, in the coming months.
So we had gotten word that Malachi Black, Miro, and Ricky Starks were no longer under contract or no longer on the AEW roster. And I heard that, and I go, okay, interesting. And I didn't think anybody would show up right away. But surprise, surprise, literally within the next day or two, Ricky Starks is on NXT. He has the crowd chanted Ricky. Everybody's going crazy. But we do have to note, he and the commentators never referred to himself as Ricky Starks. So not sure if that will end up being his name, but he definitely has used the word absolute a few times. So I feel like that's going to be part of his shtick. But it basically looks like the same guy. It looks like the same Ricky I've seen in the NWA, AEW. Like, he looks like that star, the guy that we really like. So I'm assuming he'll get a good chance. And I remember Swerve telling a story one time on a podcast with Jericho that one time he really felt like he had momentum in WWE was in NXT when he got to work with Shawn Michaels. And it wasn't the beginning. It was at some point someone had told him, well, you can talk to Shawn. And he realized how easy it was to talk to Shawn. And when Shawn started talking to him, he said, well, show me some stuff from before. And when Shawn watched stuff, Shawn would watch it, he'd look at it and go, oh, I see what's going on. We're not putting you in a position to succeed. You're not getting a chance to be who you are and do your stuff. And I feel like just looking at this, Shawn's already been tipped off on who Ricky Starks is because this is Ricky Starks. I don't know what name he's going to have or why he'd have a different name. We'll find out. But at the end, I feel like he's going to be in a great position to succeed.
100%. I can't wait to see what he's going to do. And Dave, we forgot to mention when we were talking about Grand Slam, I sent you that footage from supposedly behind the scenes where Tony Khan comes out for his famous talk to the crowd segment and then just the overwhelming boos. And, from everything that we've heard, that's not surprising. We got this from Rottweiler. He never changes his name. Rottweiler, thank you for tuning in. That's definitely a name I don't notice. Hopefully you're subscribing to us and catching more great wrestling action. But Dave, what were your thoughts on the booze video?
That's surprising. Tony has not really had a lot of goodwill, it feels like, with the majority of the wrestling public the last few years. Whether it's just keeping people under contract, which, again, other promotions have done, but Tony was the guy who didn't do that for a while, right? So here we are, people still love a lot of the wrestlers in AEW. So Tony's going to be the guy who probably takes the brunt of the criticism. And maybe rightfully so. He's the top guy there. So it is what it is. I'm not shocked by it, But it is interesting to see because I remember being at those live shows in the early days of AEW Dynamite, and people would cheer when Tony Khan came out and looked forward to those. So,
yeah, they were crazy, but I mean, they were always people were behind them. And I mean, there was a bullshit chant, I believe, at the end of the Death Riders match, which I couldn't tell if that was story related or heat towards the company.
I think it was more they didn't like the finish, but it could also be just their guys didn't win. You know, they wanted to see Jay White and Copeland win. Copeland, they were singing all the words to his song. Jay White was kind of the closer to home guy, you know, being from New Zealand. So, yeah, I just feel like that's who they wanted to win. I mean, at the end of the day, the show was, you know, one of the best crowds I've seen in a while. Everybody was super excited for it, and yet they still booed Tony Khan. So I think that says something when they're excited about your product, but they're not excited about you. Maybe it's this time, don't do that anymore. Maybe you don't need to come out and like rally the crowd up. You know what I mean? Like, just stay in the back, and maybe that'll help your perception a little bit.
100%, especially when moving venues and having all that ticket, you know, controversy behind you. But they heavily booed Tony Khan, but they're not going to boo Game Up Hard Hydration. If you haven't tried Game Up, then you are missing out. Imagine your favorite seltzer and your favorite sports drink had a baby, but it's way better than that. Each can is 110 calories, low carb, 4.9 ABV. It's a nice light drink that is not light on flavor. Game Up comes in fruit punch, orange, lemon, lime, and grape. Pick it up at drinkgameup.com or at your nearest liquor store. Author Ray Lopez presents Lockup, professional wrestling in our world. Lockup dives headfirst into the colorful world of professional wrestling. Explore the iconic characters, careers, matches, history, and families, and delve into the bizarre and fascinating entwining of professional wrestling and film, television, football, politics, gender, and race. Pre-orders are available now on Amazon.com or at MascotBooks.com. This is the perfect gift for the wrestling fan in your life. Pick up a copy today on Amazon.com or at MascotBooks.com.
Hey, all you goddamn wrestling fans out there, listen, old black Bart has got a book. It's called Wrestle. Right there. It's got some that-gum good stories in there about some that-gum good wrestlers.
Read stories of Dusty Rhodes, the Von Erich, Scott Casey, Sergeant Slaughter, Roddy Piper, Mr. Fuji, Ron Bass, Bruiser Brody, Mike Davis, the Grappler, and many others.
And I guarantee you one thing, that it'll be the best dadgum read you've had in a long, long time.
Get your book today at Russellville.com or on Amazon. Russellville, it's where wrestling lives.
Hey fans, it's the man they call Dave with producer Joe, and you probably know us as the commentary team for New Heights Pro Wrestling, but when we're not doing that, we got a podcast.
That is the Working Fans Podcast, where we talk pro wrestling, comedy, MMA, and so much more.
And tell them about that signature segment.
Oh, you talk about the 531?
You know I am.
That is a homegrown creation that has been our namesake. And if you want to know our namesake, we got Chevy, AJ Strange Brew, as well as the two of us.
And why don't you go to our channel, like, subscribe, show us some love.
Rate, review, all of it.
Read about the Northern Wrestling Federation in the book presented by Russellville.com, The Pro Wrestling Vault, Volume 2. Hear the story of Roger Ruffin, the man who trained Carl Anderson, the Monster Abyss, Jordan Clearwater, Chris Harrison, Jillian Hall.
Plus 45 other short stories including Jazz, Bobby Eaton, Kamala, Thunder Rosa, Mario Mancini, Scott Casey, PJ Black, Kerry Morton, Sal Renaro, Jeremiah Plunkett, Colby Carino, Bam Bam Malone, and many others.
Get your book today at Russellville.com. Russellville, it's where wrestling lives.